Dave Mays was used to hauling junk. Salvage work wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Most of the time. Drifting through the wreckage of a long-dead vessel, he wasn't expecting much beyond the usual. Scrap metal, maybe a few salvageable parts. What he didn't expect was her. The cryopod stood alone in the dim wreck, frost curling around its edges. Its occupant, a woman, tall, striking, and very naked save for what looked like a shimmering, crystal-studded bikini. Her violet-hued skin was smooth and unblemished, her long silver-white hair fanning out around her shoulders like a halo. She wasn't human, but she sure as hell was gorgeous. Dave exhaled sharply. "Well, sweetheart, I guess it's your lucky day." He tapped on the control panel, expecting an error message. Instead, the pod hissed, steam pouring out as the mechanisms engage. His stomach tightened. Usually, waking up after centuries in cryo was a slow, careful process. Medical teams, hydration therapy, a lot of disorientation. This pod had other ideas. The woman's eyes snapped open. Dark, predatory, and locked onto him. With a sudden fluid motion, she surged forward, shattering the last remnants of ice and stepping onto the grated floor. Dave barely had time to register her toned, athletic build before she moved. Fast. His back hit the cold metal wall. A firm hand pressed against his chest, pinning him effortlessly. Her skin was hot, radiating warmth despite the cryo chamber's freezing temperatures. Her voice was husky, thick with something primal. "You are the one." Dave blinked. What?" She tilted her head, studying him as if committing every inch of his face to memory. "You are my chosen." Dave swallowed. Okay. He'd dealt with a lot of weird things in deep space, but this was new. "Listen, sweetheart," she growled. A low, rumbling sound that sent an involuntary shiver down his spine. "My name is Tyra," she corrected. "Right. Tyra. Look, I don't know what kind of malfunction is happening in your brain right now, but you just woke up from a very long nap. Maybe let's take a second before you start making life decisions." She didn't move. Her body was tense, muscles coiled as if she were prepared to fight, or do something else entirely. Dave was very aware of how little clothing she was wearing, and how dangerously close her lips were to his. "I do not choose," she murmured. "My instincts do." Oh, great. A space warrior with a biological matchmaking system. Dave sighed, gently prying her hand off his chest. She let him. Barely. "Look, I'm not saying I'm not flattered, but maybe we table the claiming thing until we get off this wreck." Tyra exhaled through her nose, stepping back, but only slightly. "Fine. But you will not run." Didn't plan on it. The ship groaned around them, metal protesting against time and gravity. Not a great sign. Dave tapped his comm. Maze to Dagger. Got an unexpected +1. Prepping for extraction. A beat of silence. Then the ship's onboard AI responded, voice dry as ever. "Should I prepare guest accommodations or an emergency containment field?" Dave side-eyed Tyra, who was still watching him like he was a particularly delicious meal. "Let's call that a maybe." As they made their way through the wreck, Dave couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just stepped into a whole mess of trouble, the kind that came with danger, destiny, and a woman who thought she owned him. And hell, he wasn't sure if he hated it. Back aboard his ship, Dave Mays wasn't sure if he'd made the biggest mistake of his life, or stumbled into something far stranger than he was prepared to deal with. Tyra stood in the middle of his small ship's cockpit, arms crossed, eyes scanning her new surroundings like a hunter assessing unfamiliar terrain. The silver embellishments on her barely their outfit caught the dim light, making her look even more otherworldly. "You pilot this vessel alone?" she asked, her voice smooth but edged with curiosity. "Yeah. Freelance salvage." Dave moved past her, flicking switches to engage the ship's autopilot. He tried to ignore the way her gaze followed his every movement. "No crew, just me." Tyra tilted her head. "Good. No competition." Dave paused. Competition for what? Her dark eyes met his, and his stomach tightened. You. Oh boy. He let out a long breath. Okay, listen, Tara. I get that waking up from a few centuries on ice must be disorienting, but I'm pretty sure I'm not your destined mate, or whatever you're thinking. Tara frowned, stepping closer. Too close. You do not feel it. Dave did his best to keep his cool, even as she placed a hand on his chest again, lighter this time, more inquisitive than aggressive. Her warmth seeped through his shirt. I don't know what it is, he admitted. Tara's fingers curled slightly against him, as if testing his solidity. Virelian instincts do not fail. When we are awoken from cryostasis, they lead us to our fated match, the one who will ensure our survival. Dave snorted. That's the most romantic way I've ever heard someone say a biological accident. Tara narrowed her eyes. You mock. No, I just. Dave scrubbed a hand through his hair. Look, I don't doubt you believe this, but humans don't work like that. We don't have instincts that tell us who we're supposed to be with. She seemed to consider that for a moment, then smirked. Then how do you explain this? Before he could react, she moved with lightning speed, pressing her body flush against his. His breath hitched. Her skin was fever warm, her scent something intoxicatingly exotic. Oh hell. A jolt of something shot through him. Primal, electric, a need he couldn't quite suppress. His hands instinctively settled on her hips, but he forced himself to stay still. Tara's smirk widened. You feel it. Dave clenched his jaw. That's just basic biology. I see. Her fingers trailed lightly down his chest. Then if I do this, she pressed her lips just below his jaw, lingering for a fraction of a second, her breath hot against his skin. You would feel nothing. Dave swallowed hard. The ship's alarm blared, saving him from whatever reckless thing he was about to say. His heart still hammering, he pushed past Tara and checked the console. His stomach dropped. Damn it. Someone picked up the wreck's distress signal. Tara straightened, all teasing gone. Enemies. Dave grimaced. Pirates. And they're close. Tara's eyes lit up, not with fear, but with something terrifyingly eager. Good. I could use a fight. Dave groaned. Of course you could. Focusing on the immediate threat, and not the fact that his body still burned from her touch, he engaged the ship's thrusters. The battle would be a distraction. Hopefully. What worried him more was the sinking feeling that, no matter how much he denied it, she might actually be right. The dagger shuddered as Dave yanked the controls, sending the ship into a sharp roll. Laser fire streaked past the hull, missing them by inches. Well, they're persistent, he muttered. Tara stood behind him, completely unfazed by the chaos. If anything, she looked thrilled. Are we engaging? She asked eagerly. Dave shot her a look. We're running. I don't get paid for dogfights. Tara scoffed, but she didn't argue. As the ship's engines roared, they burst into open space, leaving the pirates scrambling to pursue. The chase didn't last long. Dave cut the power, letting them drift into a nearby debris field. With the ship running dark, the pirates lost their signal and eventually veered off. Dave let out a breath. That was close. Tara smirked. You are good at running. I prefer strategic survival. He stood and stretched. But now we've got a problem. That last hit messed up the sublight drive. We're stranded until I fix it. Tara shrugged. Then we wait. That was easy for her to say. She wasn't stuck in a small ship with a nearly naked, dangerously attractive alien who thought he was hers. Dave grabbed his toolkit and climbed into the access panel, trying to focus. He could feel Tara's eyes on him. Why do you resist? She asked. Dave sighed, wiping grease from his fingers. Because this isn't how things work. You don't just wake up and decide I'm your mate. She stepped closer. You feel the bond. You react to me. That's called being a man with a pulse. Tara crouched beside him, her violet skin glowing softly in the dim emergency lights. "And yet, you have not taken me." Dave tensed. "Look, it's not that I don't." Her fingers traced along his jaw, tilting his face toward hers. "Then why deny it?" His breath hitched. He wanted her. That much was undeniable. But this was more than just attraction. She looked at him like he was hers, like she'd known him forever. And somehow that terrified him more than the pirates. His voice was hoarse. Tyra didn't wait for an answer. She kissed him. It wasn't tentative. It was fierce, consuming, acclaiming. And for the first time, Dave let himself want it. His hands found her waist, then her back, pulling her flush against him. She was all heat and strength, her body molding against his as she deepened the kiss. A low growl rumbled in her throat, sending a shiver down his spine. "Tyra," he murmured against her lips. She grinned. "You do want me." "Never said I didn't." Her fingers trailed under his shirt, mapping his skin. Every touch sent fire through his veins. Somewhere in the back of his mind, the rational part of him screamed that this was crazy, that he barely knew her. But another part, the part responding to her every movement, didn't care. He lifted her effortlessly, carrying her toward the small bunk. She laughed against his lips, wrapping her legs around him. It wasn't just hunger, it was something deeper, something neither of them could fight anymore. And this time, Dave didn't want to. Dave woke to the soft hum of the ship's systems, and the warmth of a very satisfied alien curled against him. Tara's silver hair spilled over his chest, her violet skin glowing faintly in the dim cabin light. For a moment, he just looked at her. She wasn't just beautiful, she was fierce, confident, and completely unbothered by the fact that she'd thrown his life into chaos. And the craziest part, he didn't hate it.